Fairest of All, A Tale of the Wicked Queen by Serena Valentino. Copyright 2009, Disney Enterprises Incorporated, published by Disney Press. Chapter 12, The Queen in Solitude. The Queen had taken to her bed for many weeks after the funeral. She felt conflicted about refusing Snow when she came to visit. She wanted so desperately to comfort the girl, but she could not. Seeing the child only reminded her of her husband. His eyes seemed to look at her from Snow's face, and similarly, seeing the Queen in this state would surely disturb the poor girl. But it wasn't only Snow. Since the King's death, the Queen had refused all visitors save one. Verona had been ever at the Queen's side, pleading with her to get out of doors and into the sunshine. "My Queen, won't you see your daughter today?" Verona pleaded. "Perhaps you can take a walk around the grounds. She misses you terribly. It's been weeks since you've emerged. She loves Uncle Marcus, Aunt Vivian, and the huntsman, but she needs you." "I'm not up to it just yet, Verona," the Queen responded. "Very well. Remember me whenever you are in your darkest moments. I will be here for you whenever I am called upon." "I know, sister, and I am grateful for it. Now please, let me be." Verona curtsied and left the room, but the Queen knew she had every intention of returning. Verona had not been able to spend much time away from the Queen. As soon as she was certain the door was locked, the Queen walked over to the mirror, a ritual she'd engaged in daily since the funeral. She longed for the slave to appear there. She needed news of her husband, and assurance of his well-being in the world beyond. But all that stared back at her when she searched there was her own reflection. She stared at herself, broken and numb. She looked ragged and haggard. Her swollen eyes and puffy cheeks accentuated her blemishes and other imperfections, and her hair had neither been washed nor braided in weeks. She despaired over what she'd become. Perhaps her former beauty was simply an enchantment after all, one cast by her husband, and when he died, her beauty, a false beauty, died with him. How could she have ever thought herself to be beautiful? That she looked like her gorgeous mother, or rivaled in any way the King's first wife, or even little Snow? Then as she stared at her hated face in the mirror, on the brink of a despair she would never be able to recover from, something began to take shape beyond the glass. In a swirling mist, inside the mirror, the slave appeared. The Queen felt a twinge of hope and possibly even joy leap up inside of her. "It has been quite some time, daughter." "Did you enjoy the funeral?" the slave asked. The Queen's lips stiffened. "It was a beautiful ceremony, befitting a beautiful man and celebrating his life. Now I need something from you." "And what is that?" "News of my husband." The face in the mirror laughed. "News of the King ended with his life." "Can you not see all?" the Queen asked. "I cannot see beyond the grave, but I have the ability to see all things in these lands. I can see things that can make you terribly sad, and I can see things that might even make you very, very happy." "What could possibly make me happy again now that my husband is dead?" the Queen asked. "I think you know," the face replied, and then faded from view. The Queen banged on the glass and called out to the slave, but he was gone. Though the Queen did not know when he would return, she suspected he would. When he did, she would be prepared, and in the meantime, she had a message to send. Though they lived almost an entire land away, the sisters arrived just a day after the Queen sent for them. Verona sneered and scowled as they made their way into the castle, scuttling about, chattering as usual. She viewed the speed of their arrival as one more odd happening to add to the list of those that the sisters had accumulated. Snow White made herself scarce, and the attendants at the court all seemed reasonably disturbed by the women. They did not have to deal with them for long, however. The Queen requested that the sisters be brought to her chamber immediately upon their arrival at the court. "Sisters," the Queen said, "welcome." "We are," Lucinda said. "Privileged," Ruby finished. "The skies of your husband's loss show upon you," Martha said, reaching out and plucking a gray hair from the Queen's head. The Queen shifted uncomfortably. At one time, she would have banished the sisters from the kingdom forever for doing such a thing, but there was something she needed, and she knew only the sisters could deliver it. "Last we met," the queen began.
"The funeral. Such a sad day. Yes, sad, sad, very sad," the sisters clucked.
"Last we met," the queen began again, ignoring their interruptions. "You spoke of my mirror." 3 eerie smiles spread across the sisters' faces in tandem.
"The magic mirror," Lucinda said. "The portal to the other world," Ruby continued. "The one which contains the soul of the maker of mirrors," Martha said.
"So you know of it," the queen acknowledged.
"Of course we do. It was we who created it, though not created it as it tempered and gilded. But we who captured the mirror maker's soul." "Not captured," Lucinda spat. "He granted it to us." "And we captured it, tied it up in spider silk webbing, as it floated out of his body and up, 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 and we took it and locked it away. In the magic mirror. Don't forget, sisters. It was he who had asked, he who had begged, he who bartered his soul away."
The sisters began to cackle again. The queen stared at the women coolly. "I demand you tell me more. What is the barter you speak of?" The sisters began a tale that was less fragmented than the queen had ever heard usher from their lips. They spoke as one.
"You see, the maker of mirrors, his wife, wanted a child more than anything. Yet she was barren, and the maker of mirrors could not bear to see her unhappy. And we cannot bear to see one so unhappy, so we engaged the maker of mirrors. We told him that for a price, we could make it so that his wife might bear fruit, but the cost was not small."
"His soul," the queen finished. The sisters nodded in agreement, then continued.
"So the child was hers, and his, but he owed us dearly."
The queen was perplexed by her emotions. She should hate the sisters for what they had done to her father, but the queen herself so hated the man that she took great comfort in the sisters' weird imprisonment of him. "Go on," the queen commanded.
"So, once the child was born, we sealed the deal for his soul, and he had his gift, his child. We would claim his soul once he shuffled off this mortal coil. A pity, an irony, that your mother would not live to appreciate his sacrifice." "We delivered the mirror to your husband," Lucinda said. "And did you the favor of having him give it to you," Ruby finished. "Oh dear, how hard it must have been for you to be without either of your loving parents," Martha said, grinning. "But now, with the magic mirror, your father is always near," Lucinda said, grinning now too.
"I believe you said something to me at the funeral, about the mirror, about my father, about taming the spirit within," the queen said, ill at ease with the conversation and becoming increasingly anxious.
"Are you experiencing problems? Is it not working quite right? Are you having some trouble calling upon your father, my dear?" the sisters asked, moving dizzyingly from one speaker to the next.
"Yes," the queen said. "Can you show me how to tame the spirit?" The sisters chuckled.
"Are you certain that is what you wish?" they asked.
The queen nodded.
"You might find yourself ruined by the things he tells you."
"Go on, I command you," the queen snapped. The sisters shuffled over to the mirror and linked their hands. They held their arms over their heads and began to chant. "Slave in the magic mirror, come from the farthest space. Through wind and darkness we summon thee. Speak, let us see thy face." A cool wind began to blow through the room, and the curtains danced like ghosts. A flame appeared in the mirror, and then the face appeared in a swirling purple mist, just as it had all those times before. But something was different. The face in the mirror was almost expressionless, and much more docile than it had previously been. Was what they said true? Had their incantation tamed him? "What wouldst thou know, sisters?" The sisters chuckled and sniggered.
"Why have you been so very unruly for your new mistress?" the sisters asked.
"I have not been kind to your majesty." This I know, and this you can see, for she has never summoned me with the power that shackled me by thee. The sisters laughed again. You must leave now, slave, the sisters said, and the face in the magic mirror dissolved in a swirling purple whirl. Does this tutorial suit your majesty? The sisters asked. Very much so, the queen said, smiling. You may go now. Before you send us on our way, Lucinda said. We've left you another gift, Ruby continued. You will find it in your dungeon. Use it, Martha said. Well, Ruby finished. When evening fell and the sisters had left the court, the queen approached the magic mirror, still tired, but more hopeful now she would find what she looked for there. She was so fixed on the mirror that she did not give the sisters' second gift a thought. She gazed into the reflective glass and considered what she would ask. Then she recited the sisters' incantation and called forth the slave in the mirror. What wouldst thou know, my queen? The slave asked. I wish to know of my husband. Is he well? Is he among the gods or the demons? I have told you before, my queen, I cannot see beyond that which can be seen. The queen considered this. All hope that she would know what had been in store for her husband after his death swiftly left her. She could barely see her reflection beyond the face in the mirror, but what she could see terrified her. She was as ugly as her father had always said she was. There was only one thing, other than news of her husband, that might lift her spirits. Tell me, mirror, who is it that is fairest in the land? She said desperately. Are you certain that you wish for me to answer that request? The slave asked. Certain, the queen said, gritting her teeth. Know that I am bound by the truth, the slave replied. Then if it is not I, tell me who it is, the queen said, becoming enraged. I did not say it was not you. I told you I could not lie. I thought you should be aware before treading into this territory. The queen sneered and nodded. Who is she, slave? Who is the fairest one of all? The queen asked. You have been withered by this experience. You are worn, and, the slave said, Out with it, man, the queen yelled, pounding her fist upon the mantle and shouting, Who is fairest in all the land? You are, my queen, the slave replied. Then he disappeared in a swirl of mist, and the queen could once again see her face. Her eyes narrowed, and a wicked grin stretched across one corner of her mouth. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to keep up to date on all the new magic. Have a magical day.